Most Canadians are caught off guard by the same painful surprise. They hit their 70s, their RRIF income suddenly spikes, and boom, the taxes and OAS clawbacks start biting harder than expected. Working with clients, I hear the same story again and again. I thought waiting until 72 to RRIF was the best move. Why am I suddenly paying so much more tax? The problem is bigger than people think. Waiting often means your retirement plan is running on the government schedule, not yours. So today, I'm going to share with you my top 6 retirement hacks that you need to consider to help you smooth your income and keep more money in your pocket. I say these are hacks, but in reality, they're proven, tried, and true strategies that we use with clients every day. I'm going to walk through RRSP timing, CPP start age, TFSA strategies, spousal income splitting, and a few estate steps that can save your family real money down the road. Whether you're 5 or 10 years from retirement, about to retire soon, or already collecting CPP, you'll walk away with a clear process to reduce lifetime taxes, preserve OAS, and avoid last-minute scrambles when the rules lock you in. If you're new to my channel, welcome. I'm Jocelyn Ozdemir, a financial advisor here at Ferguson Financial Planning. Every week, I sit down with Canadians who are trying to make sense of how all the moving parts of the retirement fit together. Things like RRSPs, CPP, OAS, and even estate planning. The most common theme I see, people don't necessarily have a shortage of savings, but they do have a shortage of strategy. And that's exactly what we're going to get into today. 6 simple but powerful retirement strategies to give you more control over when and how you pay tax. I'll dive deeper into when to start drawing from your RRSP, how the timing of CPP plays into your overall income, why keeping an eye on OAS thresholds matters, and using your TFSA the smart way. Also, why a tiny RRIF at 65 could be a game changer. And lastly, how to prevent your estate from getting hit with an unnecessarily big tax bill. If you find this video helpful, please hit like and leave me a comment. I'd love hearing your thoughts. And of course, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss future strategies. All right, let's dive in. Let's start with the big one, your RRSP. For many Canadians, the RRSP is the largest piece of the retirement pie. It probably has felt comforting over the years to see that account balance grow and grow. But here's what often surprises people. Waiting too long to touch it can actually work against you in some cases. Here's the rule. By December 31st of the year you turn 71, your RRSP must be converted into either a RRIF, Registered Retirement Income Fund, or an annuity. No exceptions. Once you've made that move, the government requires you to pull out a minimum amount every single year starting the following year. At age 71, the minimum amount is 5.28% of your balance. So if you've got $1 million in your RRSP at that point, the government will force you to take out over $52,000 as taxable income, whether you need the money or not. And here's the kicker. That percentage keeps creeping up every year you age. Now, imagine you've built up that RSP to 1.5 or even 2 million because you didn't touch it in your 60s. Once the RRIF rules kick in, you could easily be forced to withdraw well over $100,000 a year. Sounds nice on paper, but that income can push you into higher tax brackets and right into the old age security recovery zone. Let me give you a real world example. Shauna is 61 and has about 1.1 million in her RRSP. She was tempted to just leave the account untouched and live off of her corporate dividends. But here's the problem. If she waits until 71, she'll be forced to withdraw roughly $58,000 in her first RRIF year, and that's assuming the balance doesn't grow. If the account grows to 1.6 million, her first withdrawal is almost $85,000. Add CPP and OAS into the mix, and suddenly Shauna is staring at the OAS clawback. Worse, she's paying tax at a higher average rate across her lifetime than she would have if she started small withdrawals in her early 60s. So what's the smarter move? For many Canadians, it makes sense to draw down from your RRSP gradually in your 60s, even if it feels counterintuitive. By intentionally pulling out, say $25,000 or $30,000 a year from age 61 through 70, Shauna flattens those big future spikes. She pays a lower average rate, avoids OAS recovery, and keeps her planning more predictable. Waiting until 71 is technically an option, but for some, it can still be an expensive gamble. The lesson is simple. Your RRSP doesn't just need an investment strategy, it needs a drawdown strategy. Don't wait until the minimums back you into a corner. I realize that some of these RRSP balances might not be applicable to everyone, but all of these ideas I'm talking about today are completely scalable at different levels. Now let's move to another lever you can actually pull, the timing of your CPP. Most people know you can take CPP as early as 60 or as late as 70. What they often miss is that CPP is more than just retirement pension. It's a tax tool. Here's how the math works. If you take CPP before age 65, it's reduced by 0.6% for each month you take it early. That's 7.2% per year. So if you take it at 60, you'll collect 36% less than at age 65. On the flip side, for every month you delay after 65, your CPP grows by 0.7%, which adds up to a 42% boost by age 70. On the surface, that seems like an easy decision. Wait as long as you can, but it's not quite that simple. Think of it this way. The timing isn't just about cash flow, it's about managing your tax brackets too. Let's circle back to Shauna. If she waits until 70 for CPP, she can spend her 60s systematically drawing down her RRSP at lower marginal tax rates. The extra gap years give her space to pull, say, $30,000 annually from her RRSP, which gets taxed at one of the lower brackets. By the time CPP kicks in bigger at 70, her RRSP balance is smaller, meaning her RRIF minimums later on will be easier to handle, her OAS stays safer, and her overall lifetime taxes stay lower. Here's another case. Andrew and Louise, 66 and 63. Andrew was considering taking CPP right away, while Louise wanted to delay. Their incomes were uneven. Andrew had most of the RRSP assets. What we did was line up Andrew's CPP later because he could live off partial RRIF withdrawals in the meantime. Louise started hers around 65 for household stability. Net result, both enjoyed cash flow, their combined retirement incomes didn't trigger the OAS clawback, and their long-term tax bill dropped. This is where the CPP RRSP coordination matrix comes in handy. If your bracket is lower now but higher later, pull on your RRSP now and delay CPP. If the situation is reversed, if your income is temporarily higher now and lower later, starting CPP earlier can make sense. It's all about shaping the flow of future income into the safest brackets possible. Bottom line, don't think of CPP as take it early versus take it late. Think of it as a puzzle piece that fits neatly or awkwardly into your tax picture. Let's talk OAS clawback, something that catches far more Canadians than most people realize. Here's the deal. Old age security isn't like CPP, it's clawed back once your net world income crosses a certain level. For 2025, the clawback starts at $93,454 and fully recovers at $151,668 if you're between ages of 65 and 74. For those over 75, the max threshold gets nudged up a little to $157,490. Now that might sound like a lot of income, but here's the trap. Forced RRIF withdrawals plus CPP plus OAS plus maybe pension income or dividends, it adds up quickly. It doesn't take $1 million lifestyle spending to get there. And one more gotcha. Canadian dividends are grossed up on your tax return, which increases the income counted for OAS clawback, even though dividends get a credit later on. So why does OAS matter? Because for many, OAS pays roughly $8,800 a year between ages 65 to 74 and about $9,600 to $97 at age 75 and up after the 10% bump. And don't forget that's indexed quarterly, so the exact amounts move with inflation. Lose that to clawbacks, and suddenly you forfeited what could have been well over $100,000 over a decade. That's not chump change. It's like tossing your retirement travel budget straight back to Ottawa. This is why drawing on your RRSP in your 60s can be so powerful. By trimming that account balance before RRIF minimums begin, you lower those heavy withdrawals later when OAS is in play. Same thing with managing CPP timing. Take smaller taxable amounts earlier so that the big forced amounts later don't collide with your old age security. Let me paint a picture with numbers. Shauna again. If she delays CPP and starts earlier RRSP draws, she keeps her projected age 71 income near $93,000, just below the 2025 OAS clawback threshold, which means she keeps her full benefit. But without that adjustment, her forced withdrawals in her 70s would push her income closer to $130,000, which would cost her a large share of old age security. Over a 10-year span, that's a potential $50,000 to $60,000 in reduced benefits, all because she didn't plan early. So if your future income is set to hover around or above $93,000, get ahead of it, ship some withdrawals earlier, coordinate CPP, and smooth things out. Keep your OAS safe so that you're not giving back what you don't need to. All right, let's step back for a second and talk about the tax-free savings account. Too many people think of it as a glorified savings account, and that's a missed opportunity. I have an entire video where I talk about the TFSA, so check that out. I'll leave a link for it in the description below. For 2025, the TFSA contribution limit is $7,000. If you've been eligible since 2009 and never contributed, your cumulative room is now $102,000 for 2025. And remember, growth inside the TFSA is tax-free, both while it's growing and when you withdraw. But here's what happens. A lot of retirees park their TFSA entirely in cash or GICs. They like the safety, but the downside is they miss out on years of compounding that could actually make their retirement stronger. stronger. I'm not saying you shouldn't keep a cash buffer. You absolutely should. For most households, keeping 6 months of lifestyle spending in cash is plenty for a safety net, but letting the other 78, 90,000 just sit in cash for 10 years, that's like letting your expensive luxury car rust in your garage. Case in point, John, 68, had about 120,000 in his TFSA entirely in cash. He liked the security, but if inflation is running at 3% and his cash earns less than 2%, he's actually losing money every single year in real terms. The better move, keep maybe 30,000 of that account as an emergency buffer and invest the rest across a diversified mix of equities and bonds. Over 10 years, a conservative balanced approach could grow that surplus by 60 to 80% at roughly 5 to 6% annual returns, and all of those gains would remain tax-free. That's a meaningful difference for retirement flexibility. So here's the rule. Treat your TFSA as a growth container, not just a rainy day fund. Yes, absolutely, you should fill the emergency bucket, but then put the rest to work where it compounds tax-free. At the end of the day, $7,000 added yearly, invested smartly, builds serious momentum over time. This next one is a little quiet tax hack that not nearly enough couples use. It's what I like to call the micro RRIF trick. Here's how it works. Once you or your spouse turn 65, RRIF income qualifies as eligible pension income. That unlocks two benefits. First, you can split up to 50% of that income with your spouse, and second, you can claim the pension income amount, which is a non-refundable credit on up to $2,000 of eligible pension income, worth up to about $300 federally, plus a separate provincial credit. But there's a slight nuance to this. RRSP withdrawals themselves aren't eligible for this pension splitting. Before 65, a spousal RSP can help with this sort of income equalization though. Now here's where it gets interesting. You don't need a giant RRIF to access these perks. In fact, some couples open a RRIF with just a small slice of their RSP, say $120,000 or so. By drawing regular income out of that account, they can split half with their spouse. That allows couples to better balance their tax brackets and reduce the overall household tax burden. Take Andrew and Louise from earlier. Andrew converted a chunk of his RSP into a RRIF at 65. Let's say he withdrew about $12,000 annually from that. After splitting, each spouse reports $6,000 in RRIF income, which keeps the respective tax brackets quite lean. On top of that, Andrew was eligible for the pension income amount, giving them an additional credit. Net effect, they paid less tax as a household and their income picture was smoother. The other good thing, by splitting income, you may also strategically keep each partner's income under those OAS thresholds we talked about earlier. That's double leverage. So this tiny RRIF trick is low effort, high benefit. You don't need to wait until 71 to convert everything. Even a small conversion at 65 can open the door to splitting and credits that shrink your lifetime tax bill. Now let's close with what happens at the end of life, because if you skip this step, those who inherit your estate could face a painful tax surprise. Here's the reality. Most people don't realize unless you leave your RRSP or RRIF directly to a spouse or a financially dependent child with specific eligibility, when you pass away, the full fair market value of that account is reported as income on your final return. That means if you've got $1 million RSP, the CRA will treat it as if you earned $1 million in that year. In Ontario, the top combined marginal tax rate is about 53%, so a large RSP reported all at once can see almost half taxed away unless you plan ahead. Consider my client Diane. She had $1 million in her RSP at death, no surviving spouse, and she had her children listed as beneficiaries. Because no rollover was available, that entire $1 million was taxed in 1 year. Almost half was gone, and her estate could only distribute about $500,000 to her kids. If Diane had started to withdraw earlier, say $30,000 a year in her 60s and 70s, she would have paid manageable tax rates over decades instead of a crushing bill at the end. She also could have gradually shifted funds into her TFSA or a non-registered account. Each of those steps would have left far more money net to her heirs. Here's what we put in place for her when we first met her in her early 60s. First, we mapped out a measured RSP meltdown to fill her lower tax brackets over 8 to 10 years. Then we converted a small slice to a RRIF at 65 so she could claim the annual pension income amount, and then use those withdrawals to fully fund her TFSA and move the rest into a tax-efficient, non-registered portfolio geared toward capital gains. We added direct beneficiary designations on her registered and TFSA accounts to reduce probate exposure where we could, and also earmarked a modest percentage of her RRIF to a charity so that the donation credits could offset income on her final return. Finally, we priced a small permanent life policy to cover any residual tax so her kids received the number she had in mind. The solution is simple. Steady estate planning. You start now, use gradual RRSP and RRIF withdrawals to fill lower tax brackets, fund your TFSAs each year, add beneficiary designations where appropriate, and consider a planned gift to offset tax. Those small moves can meaningfully cut the final tax bill and make settling your estate far easier for your family. So here's the big picture. Your retirement plan isn't one tap you turn on. It's a set of levers you can control. Use them in the right order and the whole system runs smoother. Start by shaping RSP RRIF timing so you're not forced into big withdrawals later. Treat CPP as a tax lever, not just a check. Delay when today's bracket is low and future brackets look higher. Keep your eye on OAS thresholds so clawbacks don't eat what you've earned. Let your TFSA do real work as a tax-free growth engine, not just a cash jar. For couples, use pension splitting to balance brackets, even a small RRIF at 65, and layer in estate stubs early so more money goes to family and causes you care about. With the 2025 tax bracket changes lowering the first federal bracket, harvesting income in lower ranges is even more attractive this year. The bottom line, don't wait and react. Plan and adjust instead. That's how you cut lifetime taxes, keep more OAS, and get the retirement you actually want. And that's really the point. This isn't about squeezing every dollar. It's about making your money work in a way that supports your life, not the other way around. Now, I'd love to hear from you. Which of these strategies stood out to you the most? Is it the idea of drawing from your RRSP a bit earlier, delaying CPP, or maybe treating your TFSA as more than just a cash jar? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I read them all and your questions often inspire future videos. And if you're sitting there wondering how this all applies to your situation, let's talk it through. Click the link in the description to book a call and we can map it out together. If you found this helpful, hit subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next video. I share plenty more strategies that can save you real money and stress over time. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.